Hello. We're live. I figure while we're waiting for people to hop on, I'm just going to do some grounding music with bowls. Kind of help us ground and set the tone. Interesting. Facebook just popped up saying to put on a mask and give yourself a fun look. If that's not a way to try to raise the vibration, I'm not sure what is. As we're waiting for people to log on, I'm just going to be doing some music here. I don't know if you have been paying attention to the energies, but especially since the solar eclipse, we know the energies have been pretty intense for a few years now. A lot of changes, but they tend to be escalating quite a bit over the past couple months, weeks, and a lot of our shadows have been really appearing in our forefront. You know, we may try to run and hide from everybody else, but we always can't run from ourselves. So, as we're waiting for people to log on, I wanted just to ask you, how have you been managing the energies lately? Are you finding yourself triggered? Are you finding yourself more anxious or tired, or actually even the opposite, having trouble sleeping? Are you having increased health issues? Some of these have been coming to the forefront. We know times are changing. I mean, I think that's the obvious thing, right? So the question is, if things are changing, as humans, we tend to resist change, don't we? So I would like to put a question just out to you. If we resist change, then how are we supposed to be better us, especially if we're supposed to be clearing out the closets that are in ourselves and allowing that butterfly, so to speak, to merge? Then how do we do that if we are resistant? Just something for you to think about. Anybody here considered an empath? Anybody here considered an empath? I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out the technicalities. I am getting some notifications here, so I'm a little bit new on this, so I'm not always proficient, so I do apologize. But, one of the things that I have found, I am teaching a class called Self-Care for the Empath, and we're learning a lot of self-discovery in that class. But one of the tools that I have noticed for myself that has been probably the most profound tool that has helped me throughout the years. And as I have said, I think some of you that follow me on Facebook have heard me say, both personally and through the threads, that Reiki changed my life, and Jikiden Reiki changed my perception of Reiki in ways that are really kind of indescribable. So when it comes to managing a lot of these energies, a lot of the tools that we learn have really helped me, in a sense, cope with these fluctuating energies that, yes, have I been triggered with my PTSD symptoms coming up? Absolutely. And but I will say, one of the things that I remind myself on is that you're one step closer. So as long as when you're healing and dealing with these symptoms, you are, hi Arnie, you're moving forward towards a path that you want. The universe will give you tests to things on how to take a step back. But it's to see how far you really come. And these energies I know have been really challenging. So I know we talked a lot about empaths. So is there anybody here that you feel is an empath that's really having some challenges? No? So one of the things I want to talk to you about is really just energy, okay? So here's a quote from Einstein, just so we have a basic understanding. All right, so Einstein basically said, everything is energy and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want and you cannot help but get that reality. It cannot be any other way. This is not philosophy, this is physics. So for those of you who might be doubtful of whether or not we are impacted by so-called cosmic forces, energies that are out there, this is law of physics. Our physical bodies are made up of mostly water. So we can kind of comprehend that, and I use the experiment when I use the Tibetan bowls with people, and I show them by adding water into the bowls, and I show them how that actually affects the body. And it's pretty profound when they get to see it externally, and then when they get to feel it internally, it really makes an impressive feeling, and it can create, and unblock various things. So we understand the human existence, in a sense, we are stardust, right? We are stardust. So, and energy does move through the body. There's various, therapies that are out there, including acupuncture and myofascial release, all these different beautiful modalities that really help us and show where the energy actually moves, and it moves through the fascia tissue. And then if we want to go into the Eastern philosophies in India with the chakras, we have that system as well, and the meridians as well. So there's various ways that the body moves energy, but the easiest way for those who may not be familiar that I talk to about is one, let's just go to physiology, okay? The brain and the heart self-generate electricity. So when we can understand that the physical body actually self-generates electricity, then how can it not affect the organs in various other areas of our body? Okay? So, for instance, your heart. I always use the analogy of, well, geez, if your heart stops, do you know that you need 2 paddles to jumpstart your heart? The reason being is you have 2 nodes called the SA node and the AV node that actually self-generate electricity to make it go ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Okay? And we also understand electricity externally. So externally, there's a reason why we have plastic that surrounds the electrical wires, right? The reason why we have that is to protect, first of all, you from getting zapped, but also to keep the electrical current going in the same direction. So when we understand that, we have that same mechanism within our physical body. It's called the myelin sheath. The myelin sheath is like that plastic cord that's around your electrical cords around your house that protects all the conduction that comes from your brain, all the electrical current that comes from your brain, and sends it out through the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems throughout the body. So when we talk about now back to Reiki, I bring those things up for people mostly because if you don't understand energy, then it's kind of hard to understand how Reiki works, okay? So Reiki really is a form of Japanese healing, mind, body, that therapies, and there's different versions. And when in the Sui's time, it was called Shinshin Kaizen Usui Reiki Ryoho, which means it's Reiki for the improvement of the mind and body. Okay, so it's a healing. So and in Japan, it was used actually as a therapy, and but we also, when it came to the West, there were things that were taught in Japan that weren't necessarily taught because it was part of their culture, especially the Shinto part of the culture. And that's a lot of the mindfulness-based therapies, okay, the mindsets and the connections to the universe and nature, okay, so to speak. So when we talk about Reiki and we talk about how it affects us, we're working with that electrical conduction within the body. Our body creates currents within the body, and it stores. So when we experience, for instance, trauma, it's going to go somewhere unless we find a way to release it. We, in Jikiden Reiki, we refer it to as toxins. Okay, so our body takes in toxins every day, whether it's through the air we breathe, the environment that we're in, whether in our home or in our work environment. It is also stirred in through the foods that we eat, emotional, people, various different ways, and the body stores these toxins, okay? And the body has its way of eliminating these toxins. But when our energies get depleted or they're low, then it starts to store. So it stores in various places, like in our head, in our joints, and then eventually into our organs, all right? So Jikiden Reiki is the direct teaching. So the word Jikiden actually means direct teaching of Reiki out of Japan before it became westernized as it was taught before 1938. So it goes really into a lot of the roots of Reiki, and that to me made a big deal as somebody that has suffered post-traumatic stress disorder. I felt like I always had to add something, or something, it just wasn't enough. So for somebody like myself, I felt like I needed something deeper. And I really, to this day, can't explain, what that exact difference is. What I can say is I felt a big shift just within my energy and my ability to cope and deal with the external toxins. And what it did is it helped clear out the toxins much more effectively and efficiently within my own body. So when I would try to meditate or I would try to ground, it actually became easier to do those other practices. I also even noticed that for somebody who is a self-proclaimed sugar addict and very anti-vegetable, I didn't set these out as intentions, but all of a sudden I was craving healthier foods. I wasn't carrying around a 6-pound bag of Skittles in the back of my car or anything like that. And the things I laugh at now, I go, geez, I'm eating kale and I'm eating spinach. That would have been unheard of 10, 12, 15, 20 years ago. That just doesn't happen. So anybody have any particular questions as we kind of go along? And is any of this making sense to you? How are you doing with the energies lately, especially since the new moon yesterday? Hi, Marcia. How have you been handling with these energies? Especially, there was a big shift yesterday with the new moon. It was like a big rubber band snap. Ba-boom. So, I tend to do Reiki in a medical establishment, so I do work with a lot of people with cancer, with dementia, with post-traumatic stress, addictions. It has been found to work with various different things. Yes, it's been very emotional. I can absolutely feel that. I can say that my anxiety has gone through the roof, but there are things that we learn on top of the basic things. What I found with Jikiden Reiki, for instance, is those basic things I'm able to do more effectively. I don't know why that is, outside the fact that I believe it could be that my system is just a little clearer, and so I'm able to meditate better, I'm able to ground better, I'm able to discharge that anxiety much more effectively. Oh, I'm glad to hear you're doing great. Yay, that makes me happy. So it's those type of things, and of course, as I said before, I started off with the Tibetan bowls just to kind of ground, get things kind of squared away. But we have to talk about, one of the things I say is that one of the things that I find missing in the medical community, for instance, is that, and I grew up in a healthcare system, and way, way back when, we were treated as a whole. And I use kind of like the three-legged stool analogy, representing the whole self. So one leg would represent the physical self, another one would correlate to the emotional and physical self, and then the third leg would represent the spiritual self. So if you're in a current medical crisis, the challenge is you need to make sure you address all three legs, or the challenge is you might not be getting better, especially with these current energies that are really challenging, especially our shadow parts of ourself, which are very difficult to face, because who wants to really face our mistakes, the things that we may not like about ourselves? So those have really been coming to the surface, but the sooner you kind of address them and face them with love and compassion, again, some of the things that Reiki teaches you is that it's through the Reiki principles. And I can share those with you. For instance, the Reiki principles in English are: just for today, do not anger, do not worry, be grateful, do your duties dutifully. Hi, Jennifer. Be compassionate to yourself and others. But one of the things I realize, sometimes things get lost in translation. So even though I'm not, Japanese is very difficult for me. It has been one of the things since I have switched my styles of Reiki, has been difficult for me to grasp and to say some of the words effectively. But the one thing I do know, I understand energy. So when I say the Reiki principles in Japanese, I really find a greater shift. So for instance, in Japanese, it's Kyo Dakiwa, Ikaruna, Shinpai Suna, Kansha Ste, Gyo Hagame, Etoni Shinsetsuni. So I don't know if you felt the difference just with me saying that, but I know for me, like, I'm getting goosebumps right now. So it really does, it's a carburetor adjustment that makes a big difference. So these are things that are taught in Jikiden Reiki. And those are principles that we live day to day. So for instance, if you have, for instance, the S-Marsh, or worry, that goes into the anxiety category. So sometimes there might be days and I'm sitting there going, Shinpai Suna, Shinpai Suna, Shinpai Suna, just until I get it, and I feel it and it calms me down. And I say between that and nature are the best Xanaxes in the whole world, just for me at least. I can say that. I don't know about anybody else. But I do know that my Jikiden Reiki practice has really helped me practice everything else much more effectively. We do have a class coming up in 2 weeks. So some of the things that you would learn are how to implement these Reiki principles, especially in Japanese, much more effectively. You're also taught really the roots of Reiki and really what the translation, again, one of the things that happened when things came to the West, and it was really no mistake, it was just an error in translation, is really understanding the roots of Reiki, really what it means. Because when you understand that, then you can fully embody it. Hi, Annette. So you can, when you can finally embody those principles and really embody the meaning, it really comes down to understanding it, right? How can we understand something if we don't know really what it means? And I think sometimes as teachers we forget that, yes, history and understanding and comprehending some really simple basic things is so, so very important. And with the Jikiden Reiki, because it's all about removing toxicity from the body. When you remove toxicity from the body and allow the body to heal itself, then the body can rejuvenate a lot more effectively. I mean, I can't tell you to this day, I've been doing this work for 12 years, and I can't tell you there isn't a day I'm never amazed in my office. I was just working on somebody with a big cyst right here, a female. Can you imagine a cyst this big on the forehead? And she came in for something else, but I said, let's just try something here. And so we did. I did a technique that we learn in Reiki, and we were able to reduce it, believe it or not, in 20 minutes by at least 90%. And I was blown away. There isn't a day that I'm not blown away when I see these things, and how amazed, how responsive her body was. And she did make a note that her vertigo also went away that day as a result. So, and I'm sitting there going, geez, now she might be able to possibly avoid surgery and having a nice nasty scar right here in the middle of her forehead. Wouldn't that be nice? So these are simple things, and there's plenty of stories that I could give you. I had another student that, which if you go to my Reiki blog, it talks about her story where her son had a traumatic hockey accident, which they were requiring emergency surgery, but they had to postpone it to let the swelling go down, and she started applying the Jikiden Reiki techniques. And let's just say he went from almost never playing hockey again to playing hockey in 3 months with no surgery. So these have been various things that we have found that Jikiden Reiki has been very beneficial. I've worked with people with dementia. It doesn't mean it's going to slow down the disease, but the quality of life has been amazing, what I have witnessed with people with dementia. And, and it's sad to hear stories where sometimes people with dementia are pretty much almost comatose and bedridden for years before they cross and they pass. And my philosophy is I feel like it doesn't have to always be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. We can apply these therapies for people and give them an ease. And I remember this one particular time when I was working on somebody with dementia, and, they were very late stages, and those who know people that have had with Alzheimer's or some form of dementia will see that their sight starts going, their ability to hear starts going, their ability to swallow starts going. And when I started doing Reiki on them, they were able to get up and walk to their wife unassisted, hearing clear as a bell, talking clear as a bell, and it was just mind-boggling. And that person was only bedridden for maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks. And was able to pass peacefully at home, literally overlooking the ocean with the sun setting. And to me, that's a pure gift. And these are just some of the stories that I could give you. I mean, I could be on here forever telling you all these things that I've seen and witnessed that I think we forget sometimes with westernized Reiki. It's taught as just a relaxation therapy, which is wonderful, because if it wasn't for that, it wouldn't be implemented in hospitals. And when we understand stress response, it is responsible for about 70% of our illness and disease in this country. So that's phenomenal, but let's take it a step further. Let's take it a step deeper. And that's what Jikiden Reiki, I have found, offers. And so, we do have a class coming up in October. Oh, I'm glad to hear it worked on Mary's edema. Yay! See, I'm glad to hear that. Jennifer, we can talk about, if you would like to come in, or, we can talk about that. Send me a private message, and, we can talk about that. Will it help with the toxic poisoning I sustained? I'm on such a restricted nutrition plan to help with detox. That's possible, but I'm also going to just say, and I say this with everybody, even though I've had these successes, at the end of the day, all I am doing is plugging you in. I'm applying certain techniques, but it's your body's ability to respond and my ability to listen to your body and how it responds. So it's really a partnership, Jennifer, and we can talk about that. And yes, I talk stories and successes, but anybody that knows me that has come in to see me, I never promise whether it will or will not. What I can say is that Reiki does find a way to help you in some way. It doesn't always help you in the way that you may perceive it or that you feel that you need. It will go sometimes in the way that it feels it needs for you, for your highest and best. So that's a whole nother story. But the class that's coming up in 2 weeks, it is a 2.5-day class. It's very detailed. It's very, we go over so much, and sometimes I wonder if 3 days is enough, and this is just for level 1. We go quite in detail with the history. For those who don't know that may be trained in Western Reiki, a lot of new research has come out over the past 2 or 3 years that has really altered some of the things that we may have thought. And again, it's for nobody's fault, but it just because we didn't understand language. Again, even some people can't understand and we hear this in China too, different dialects, it's very difficult. Sometimes it's just a misunderstanding and a tweaking. So we have updated history, and I have studied with our Java Petter, who, in my opinion, I feel is probably one of the leading Reiki historians in the world, and I have been very gifted to study with this beautiful soul, and who has really helped me even update some of the things that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't know this, So it's really, this class is meant for those who want to learn Reiki, but also those that are Reiki practitioners that feel like there's something missing, or that they feel like they need more than what they have, okay? Prior to learning Jikiden Reiki, I was a Sui Reiki master teacher teaching Reiki for 6 years. So when I learned Jikiden Reiki, it was like a wow for me, a complete wow. And so we learn the history. You also get 3 what we call reijus. A reiju is basically helping you reawaken your soul. In Japanese culture, they believe that the soul is kind of implanted in utero and that you're born pure. So it's helping you reconnect there and help clear out. It's like calling in the plumber and clear out that clogged pipe. Okay, so you get 3 of those. In Western Reiki, they kind of call them attunements or initiations. These are different because in Jikiden Reiki, it does differ in philosophy, in technique, and just in the whole way of being. It's just a different process. So I know the difficult thing for me coming from Western Reiki was kind of undoing what I learned to learn this version, because it is pure Japanese. That's pre-1938 as it was taught then. And you will learn various techniques that are not taught in Western Reiki. One that helps stimulate the lymphatic system and help you basically help the body release that toxicity much more effectively. As somebody that has worked with trauma, one of the things I found when I was doing westernized Reiki, and I always felt like I had to add something else to help minimize what we call a healing crisis. Okay, and when we're dealing with people with like sex abuse or domestic abuse or child abuse, that's like pulling down the Hoover Dam, and it can be very traumatic for those people. So knock on wood, I have not quite found that level of toxic release because of certain techniques that we do in Jikiden Reiki that help minimize those healing crises and makes the energy flow a little bit. The results, I must say, I also find the results to be much more apparent. So, and it's not that one's better than the other. I can only go based on my personal experience and what I have done. And that could be whether or not, is it Jikiden Reiki because of what it is, or is it because I added Jikiden Reiki on top of what I learned in westernized Reiki? That I cannot answer. So I can only go based on what I've seen from my experience as I've grown. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? Did I kind of explain things with Jikiden Reiki effectively with you? One of the things that I also know that I have found just personally for myself, when we get these intense bouts of energy crisis, I really have found, again, I think it's because of the practice and what we learn in Jikiden Reiki that helps us maintain our own energy balance very effectively, that when we get these bouts, I seem to be able to handle them much more effectively, so much so that a lot of the Western therapies I used to do, I am no longer needed. I used to have a lot of medications I used to be on 10 years ago, and so that I have not needed because of the things that I have learned with Jikiden Reiki. And yes, it has. I feel like it has changed my insides because I'm eating differently. I'm not craving toxic foods. I'm not craving all those things that I know that make us sick. So if there's anything that I can do, whether personally or professionally, whether you would like to have a session or whether or not you would love to join us in the class. One thing I will say that this class coming up in Japan, I will say how it's taught. I don't know how many people here have children, but one of the philosophies in Japanese style Reiki is to really help train one person in each family unit. Because they've actually used this form to reduce fevers without the side effects. We forget, for instance, that Tylenol and Motrin are probably some of the most toxic medications in our market, and it's over the counter. And it was responsible for a lot of long-term health diseases and consequences because it taxes our livers and it taxes our kidneys. And that causes a lot of long-term damage over time. So instead of giving our children Tylenol or Motrin a lot of times, Reiki in Japan, for instance, is their first aid for cuts, for bruises, for burns, for fevers. And they use the Western medicine as a last resort. And it has been, I have seen fevers reduce. I have seen swelling reduce. I have seen wounds that weren't closing for 4 months close within 24 hours after implementing this version of Reiki, which to me still astounds me. And some of these are with Reiki practitioners. So, it's these various things that you learn. And if you take your power back, I guarantee you, this is just one tool, but this will help you get to that path by removing all that toxicity from the body. So I am here to help you. My website is www.laurahealingwithspirit.com. I did wanted to share with you, if I can find out what I just did with it, give me just a moment. If you aren't able to join us for our class coming up, I also have here, which I will show you here. I don't know if you can see it, it's probably backwards, but November 1st, I am also doing a free seminar at the Hingham Library on November 1st on healing trauma through spiritual-based practices. So I will be going over a lot of these type of therapies, but also including things that are implemented with mindfulness and other spiritual-based practices that I have personally used, I have studied, so it's a combination of personal use and what I benefited from, as well as what I've used professionally. So I am here to help you. Yes, I hear you, Jennifer. I have a loved one that is currently hospitalized right now, and it has been very frustrating to say the least, and I can't wait for them to be home so we can re-implement some of the holistic remedies that we were doing. So, yes, Marcia, well, put it this way, as far as native healing, every culture has their own different versions, with healing. And, I had somebody once say to me, is it similar to like when Jesus was doing healing? Well, as my teacher once said, I wasn't there when Jesus was there, so I don't know. Healing is healing. As long as it works for you, that's wonderful. Reiki just happens to be a Japanese form of healing that's very Shinto-based and with some Buddhist influences and a few other things. But I'm hoping that you will join us. I love teaching. My whole passion really is to help you improve your life and help improve your family's quality of life. So, and again, let's, if we're talking about abuse, for instance, let's break the cycle of abuse. one person at a time through healing. And I really have found Jikiden Reiki as a big source. And I will end you with this. For those of you who on Facebook may have seen it, okay? And this is a quote. You know, sometimes even us teachers, even though I've been doing this 12 years, have to go back to basics. And I was pulling through some of my old books the other day, and I remembered, and I remember before this statement kind of stuck with me, and it basically says this: there is a prophecy on the tombstone of Mikao Usui, the founder of Reiki, that the practice of Reiki will spread all over the world, healing the people as well as planet Earth itself. And that was written by Frank Arjava Petter, who's my teacher, as well as Tadao Yamaguchi, who happens to be the president of the Jikiden Reiki Association in Kyoto, Japan. And the title of the book is The Hiyashi Manual. So I hope I helped you. I hope I enlightened you. I hope I gave you a direction, whether or not you would like to try Reiki, at least try some form of holistic therapies and remedies and all those different things that help you help your body. Your body is designed to heal itself. It's time to reclaim your own power. And yes, I'm just a tool to help your body do that. It's kind of like sticking the jumper cables on your dead battery. You know, it's that kind of thing. That's basically all I'm doing. You already have all the tools. That's it. Okay? I'm going to send you with a lot of love. I'm going to kind of close out with a little bit of the bowls and the sounds. And I'm hoping, again, and I will post some links for you. The class in Hingham is on a Friday night. It starts at 7 to 9:30, October 6th. Saturday and Sunday, October 7th and 8th. They begin from 9 to 6:30. And it's very, it's just amazing, you know. And we do get people that come in that we get to practice on that are very toxic, usually post-op, pre-op, or cancer. So you're able to feel and learn how to feel those toxicities pretty effectively. So I thank you for sharing this time with me, and I hope you have a magical day. And don't forget to take time out for yourself. Thank you.